K-State has their associate head coach. Jerome Tang has named Matt Driscoll to the position. Driscoll's been the head coach at North Florida for the past 16 seasons, was an assistant at Baylor alongside Jerome Tang from 2003 to 2009 before moving on to the North Florida job later that year. We had said for the past several months, the ideal candidate for this position would be someone who's been a prior head coach. And I guess maybe a humble brag here, DY, but when we were told about 3 to 4 weeks ago that they were expected to hire an active head coach, we all kind of collectively landed on Matt Driscoll as somebody who would make the most sense. And now we have it. Driscoll's the guy. What's your reaction to the hire?
It's kind of the type of coach that I've wanted Jerome Tang to put on a staff for a while. Now, I didn't necessarily want it to be at the expense of Yerk Malagy. I have a lot of respect for him, and kind of wish they could have the best of both worlds on that front. But in terms of a guy with head coach experience, a savvy, real basketball mind that can maybe provide some structure and organization and all of these things, a lot of basketball experience, I think as a first-time head coach, Jerome Tang could have benefited from that greatly. And he still will, in my opinion, here as we go on to year 4 under Jerome Tang at Kansas State. But in my eyes, it could have been a welcome addition, right out of the gate. And that's not to judge them for the staff that they did hire or the moves that they did make that first year. They went to the Elite Eight. They didn't necessarily need any help as they rode the train of Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson. But I think for a first-time head coach, having another guy like this on your staff is always a pretty good thing. Bill Self is basically, he's not a first-year coach, kind of doing the same thing with Jacques Vaughn that they just brought in. Grant McCaslin did the same thing when he hired Linder from Wyoming to bring him on board at Texas Tech as sitting head coach. So there's plenty of examples of where that's been done. Now, Juwan Howard was a first-time head coach at Michigan. He did the same thing when he brought in Phil Martelli. Now, Juwan Howard kind of nosedived to Michigan anyways, but it's been a strategy that I think a lot of people would suggest a first-time head coach do. So I think you'll be able to kind of plug in the holes and fill in the gaps pretty well. And I know you got some offensive numbers because we anticipate him kind of running the offensive show going forward. So that'll be a change as well, because in the past, quite frankly, it's been Rodney Perry. So we expect those responsibilities to now go to Matt Driscoll, which, we'll see how that kind of works itself play out too. It's almost I don't think it's a demotion of responsibility in ways for Rodney Perry, not really a demotion in role, because I don't think his place on the staff necessarily is changing with him and Jareem Dowling still both here. But the offensive controls now we do expect to be run by Matt Driscoll. So it's almost like in football when you change your offensive coordinator. That's essentially what Jerome Tang's going to be doing with this move, with this hire. Now, typically when you do change that offensive coordinator, the previous one isn't still on your staff. So that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. And to your point about head coaches being assistant coaches or kind of that lead chair as associated coach, DY, like you mentioned Michigan, and then they did it, this year with Dusty May in his first year at the job with Mike Boynton on the staff, the former Oklahoma State head coach. You got Frank Haith, who's been a sitting associate head coach or assistant coach at Texas, the former Missouri and Missouri head coach and former Miami head coach. You got Chris Lowry when he was with Bruce Weber and the associate head coach at K-State. He was a long time. Was it Northern Illinois? Where was
Southern Illinois.
Southern Illinois. I should have known that. So he was kind of the right-hand man for Bruce Weber at K-State during his entire time here as well. So it's a popular move to make. And I think for a head coach like Jerome Tang, who is still relatively young as a head coach in terms of experience, as he heads into year 4 of being a head coach, this is the type of hire that I think you really need. And then to couple that with Bill Peterson, another longtime assistant coach, you've got some veteran experience ties on this staff.
Yeah, and especially with the college athletics world that is constantly changing. I think that makes it even more difficult on a first year coach because you're trying to find your niche, your routine, the way you want to operate. But at the same time, it's like the rules are different every single year. I think having some minds that have kind of been around it for a while know what to sacrifice, know what to abandon, and know what not to sacrifice and not to abandon. Those choices and decisions, I think getting their counsel on it is kind of a big deal.
Yeah. And we're going to do a deep dive here on Matt Driscoll, his offensive philosophy, his system that they ran at North Florida. We will talk in depth about that. But some people, and we'll probably do that after the break here in a few minutes, DY. But some people might be wondering, like, well, how do you get a sitting head coach to come be an associate head coach, Kansas State, a guy who's been a head coach for 16 years at North Florida, a Division I school. And, when Matt Driscoll took that job at North Florida, that program had lost 22 games in each of the past 4 seasons while they made the transition to Division I basketball. I interviewed Matt Driscoll before, very high energy, very likable. Reason being, they came to Manhattan 3 different times while I covered the team.
Yeah, they were here when I covered a team maybe once or twice too. I think their most recent one was probably when they played Bruce Weber, or because I don't think they played Jerome Tang at K-State yet.
I don't believe so, but they did play Frank Martin's teams multiple years, and then I believe Bruce Weber at least once or twice. They came here 3 straight years. They came to Manhattan in 2010, 11, 11, 12. DY, the 11-12 game went to overtime. K-State won 79-68. Again, he came from Baylor. He was there for six seasons, 2003 to 2009. There's a familiarity with Jerome Tang. But people might be wondering, like, okay, he's leaving a head coach position. Well, like the reason we brought up Matt Driscoll's name, not only the ties to Jerome Tang, but I think a lot of these coaches at these smaller schools are probably a little tired, DY, in the NIL era of getting their best players poached. And look what's happened to Driscoll over the last 2 years. Chaz Lanier averaged nearly 20 points per game in North Florida in the 2023-24 season, shot 51% from the floor, 44% from 3, was a coveted guy in the transfer portal. He went to Tennessee, was the SEC newcomer of the year this last year, was 6th in the SEC in scoring with nearly 18 points per game. And then this offseason, his 2 best players, Josiah Miles, 6'6", sophomore wing, and Josh Harris, 6'8", freshman forward, one averaged 15 points a game, the other over 13 points per game. Those guys hit the portal and they landed at Indiana. So he's losing his best players in the portal. That has to be infuriating, incredibly frustrating for a guy coaching there. They don't have the resources, and now he can come coach with a guy he's really familiar with at a program that's going to have the resources allocated to be able to be successful.